Here in East Tennessee, we're surrounded by all this beautiful farmland like you see behind me. Now, working in the industrial automation sector, I'm always wondering, when are we going to see the robots? People gotta eat, and the robots are creeping forward. So what are the big players doing this year? Some pretty groundbreaking stuff, actually. Stay tuned and find out. Smart farming. What is it? Well, it's actually known as precision agriculture in the industry, and it's really just using a system of robots, self-driving vehicles, sensors, vision systems, and AI to increase data collection on a farm and replace workers. The argument for it that they're given, because farmers can be difficult to convince to try new things, is that this is really their only chance to navigate rising input costs due to supply chain shortages and inflation with fertilizers, herbicide, pesticide, diesel, etc. And they're also citing a lot of weather inconsistencies that we've been seeing the last couple of years. Some strange weather events have dropped crop yields, and that ties into the farmer's profit margin, of course. Also, food insecurity in general. Some trends that we're seeing in the space, I noticed I've been combing through some market research the last week or so. AI vision systems are a big one. This AI is just improving exponentially, and now it's starting to be able to differentiate between different crops, good crops, weeds, etc. New crops coming on every day. This robot as a service system, which is like you're renting a robot kind of per acre. You're not really owning it, you're not really leasing it, you're paying for the amount of work that it's doing. A lot of companies are turning to this. It's also a big focus on fleets, which is like, one employee, one operator using 8 self-driving tractors at once, or monitoring them, not so much using them. Also, a big increase in camera, LiDAR, GPS technology, where you can tell exactly where your robots are within a centimeter or two. Very precise. Notable one that I noticed here was that there's a lot of big money coming in that came in 2022, and they're starting to buy startups. They're starting to feel comfortable spending their money investing in these startups. We saw John Deere, Case New Holland, which is owned by the Fiat Motor Company dynasty. Yamaha, Toyota investing heavily in 2022. Insurance companies are also starting to get involved. Nationwide made a partnership this last year to assess risk on these farms. And there's a geographical focus on California, Israel, and Netherlands for a lot of this R&D. All right, real quick overview on the different types of automation currently being implemented in the agricultural sector. We got automated harvesting. We have self-driving tractors. We have farm mapping, soil composition sensing, automated weeding, drones, precision irrigation, insurance, storage, and indoor vertical farming, which really deserves its own separate video, and we're not going to touch on that so much here, but fascinating. Automated harvesting is a tough one for engineers to get a handle on, because you want to make sure the robots don't damage the fruits and vegetables, and they tend to be non-uniform in nature. Here's a company out of Norway called Agrobot. They've had a robot that picks strawberries as an example. This thing's pretty cool. There's 24 different manipulators on this robot, drives through these lines, picks the strawberries, puts them in bins, and goes to the end where it deposits the bins. They also have this cool bug vacuum, which actually goes through, it's this robot, it goes through autonomously and vacuums up bugs, which if you've done any growing, sometimes you just get plants just covered in beetles and stuff. I could see this thing actually helping out a lot. Got another company here called Abundant Robotics, which was purchased recently by Wavemaker Labs out of Los Angeles. They are leveraging machine learning and vision systems to sense the ripeness of apples, and they have these vacuum arms that go out and suck up the apples when they've determined that they're ripe. There's another one here, which is actually kind of a more advanced version of that, called Tevel, which is based out of Israel. And this one, actually, they've managed to pick apples, peaches, nectarines, apricots, plums, and pears. So they're really focusing on orchards and fruit trees. And they have this crazy looking system, which is it's a big robot platform that drives down through the rows. And then it's got these 8 little drones that fly up off that platform. They're all powered by it. And these robot drones have vacuums on them. And they leverage that with the same type of vision system that we saw with the last company. And they're harvesting fruits that way. They also use a stabilizing AI to correct flight imbalances when they pick a fruit and the drone gets tilted one way. We're seeing a lot of growth in the autonomous vehicle realm, which these robots or autonomous self-driving tractors are used for spraying, planting, tilling, applying fertilizer, pesticides, and mapping. And this is typically based on vision cameras, LiDAR, and GPS technology. There's a big problem with the GPS technology because it's based on satellites, which have to communicate through the ionosphere and the atmosphere. And my last video was on that subject if you want to learn more about potential issues with that form of technology. But there are ways to make it a little bit better using base stations and calculations to self-correct potential issues. This is FieldBee. They're a Netherlands/Ukrainian company that's created a platform to turn existing tractors into fully autonomous vehicles with very precise GPS capabilities. A similar version of that is Bear Flag Robotics, or that was their platform until they were purchased for $250 million at the end of 2021 by John Deere. And now they've got a partnership where you can buy these Bear Flag Robotics systems straight from John Deere dealers. And they do the robot as a service, so you pay like per acre. I think this one's pretty cool. This one is called the Gus. And it's a self-driving, fully autonomous spraying system. I just think it looks cool. And this sprays like herbicides or pesticides or whatever on your plants. They actually use a vision system to see exactly where your trees are, and they meter out like a specific amount of spray per each tree. They don't spray like in between. This is another one that John Deere purchased in 2022, just a few months ago, and so now you can buy these at John Deere dealers as well. We have another one here, the Burro, based out of Philadelphia. They're a robotics company, also gobbled up by John Deere in 2022, or at least they have a partnership. They haven't bought them outright. They also have a lot of investing from Toyota, also in 2022. So these guys are just coming in last year. Like, this is all pretty cutting edge stuff. This is a collaborative robot, or a cobot, which are, I see them all the time in my line of work. They're big, usually big arms. They're meant to work alongside people. This is a small motorized platform that drives around and is meant to work alongside people. It's got sensors so it can sense if someone's around. It's designed not to hurt people that it's around. It's designed to be very careful, very gentle. And these can travel along with harvest crews of 6 to 10 people, and supposedly increase their productivity by 10 to 40% is what they claim, as this thing is just going back and forth, unloading all their harvest constantly. It uses vision, LiDAR, GPS, kind of the same as all this other stuff. Down the line, they plan to put robot arms on it also for picking and harvesting applications, but this is still pretty new. Precision farm mapping is another area that's growing very fast right now. You can see exactly the dimensions of all your different fields. You can chart exactly how well they're all growing at different parts of their growing cycle. You can see when they're ready to harvest, if they need more fertilizer or water or whatnot. Traditionally, this was done by just going out in the fields and recording, but now all these companies are starting up with drone technology to measure exactly in real time on a day-to-day basis all of your fields and generate real-time biometrics on them. This precision farm mapping technology is also being combined with soil sensing technology to see exactly what the soil chemistry is in different fields of your farm. And as of this last year, it's also being used in insurance applications to figure out exactly how to gauge and price the risk of your assets and damages. Aerobotics is a South African company that has a partnership with Amazon to use their AI cloud computing tech in order to scan over your fields and figure out the exact growth level of everything. And most recently, this company, as of just last month, December 22, has started a AI-based farm insurance program. So they're actually offering farm insurance using their technology. So you can get farm insurance through these guys, but you got to have one of their drones on your farm. I guess kind of like the way, some of these car insurance companies have you drive with these little safe driver stickers. It's just different ways to generate more data for the insurance risk analyzers. Another interesting company here, Ondas. This is a Massachusetts broadband data communications company. They purchased American Robotics in 2021, which is a California agricultural drone company. And just last month, December 2022, they purchased Aerobotics, which is a Israeli, same name as the other company, but with an I instead of an E. This is an Israeli agricultural drone company as well. They're specializing in a kind of a drone in a box type business model where you get this base station in your farm and the drone charges at the base station, flies up, does its scanning, goes back to its base station at night. This is going to be a robot as a service deal, similar to a lot of the self-driving tractors where you pay for the amount of work that it does. You don't actually own this. This company is special because they got FAA approval last year, the Federal Aviation Administration, to actually fly these things autonomously using some acoustic sensing technology that they have to avoid collisions with other flying objects. These things have a 2-mile range out of their base station, and they're gearing for agriculture, but they're also being used pretty heavily in oil and gas exploration. These guys, Precision Planting, they were a Monsanto company that was recently sold to AGCO, which is another ag tech giant. They have this smart farmer sensor, it's called, which is a revolutionary new technology. It drags behind a tractor and uses multispectral camera imaging to detect the exact soil moisture, organic content, and chemical composition within a seed trench. And you can then upload this data and interface it with your smart maps of your farm so you can see the exact chemical content of different fields within your farm. And then this one is more storage, but they're partnered with Nationwide Insurance, so they're also on the insurance side of things. This is a company called Quanturi, which is based out of Finland, and they have this technology called hay tech, which is Internet of Things, wireless monitoring of your hay storage, and it measures the fermentation process going on within your hay, because when you're storing it there, eventually, within those bales, it's heating up and it's decomposing. And there's a big problem with hay fires that farmers have to deal with, and insurance companies are using this type of technology to have a better read on exactly what level of fermentation your storage is at. These guys also have a system for grains, so you can see exactly the temperature and the dryness content and the moisture content in your grain elevator. And they have another one for compost, so you can see how well your compost is doing and if your compost is ready or not. Automated weeding is another sector that has a lot of investment going into it right now and a lot of big gains because of artificial intelligence using neural networks to detect exactly which plants are good and which plants are bad. I actually saw this, the advancement of this type of technology, just using those little plant ID apps you can download for your phone just to see like what type of plants are around you when you go on a hike or something. A few years ago they were crap and they always got it wrong, but just this last year or so they've gotten pretty good, and I've been using them with some good effect. These guys are leveraging the same technology. This is a company called Blue River Tech. They were purchased last year by John Deere. Another one. They're just gobbling these companies up. These guys have a drag-along trailer that hitches up to your tractor, and it has cameras in it that can detect one or two different types of weeds, and then it sprays herbicide right on that weed. So this one supposedly can reduce the amount of herbicides that farmers use by 90%. These guys are along the same lines, except they have a standalone version also that's fully autonomous. These guys are called Eco Robotics. They're a Swiss company that's funded by BASF, the giant chemical company. They've been investing in these guys. And they're same deal. They have sensors. They can detect different types of weeds, and they just precisely spray herbicide just on the weeds and avoid your plants. And they also have the ability to apply a fertilizer as well. They have a robotic autonomous driving version and a drag-along trailer version that hitches up to your tractor. This one's pretty cool. I like this one a lot just because it uses electricity instead of herbicides, which I'm not too big on all the chemicals. This is a company called Rootwave out of the United Kingdoms, and they do electric shocking of weeds. So you shock the weed with like an electric rod, and the electricity goes into the roots and burns them through infrared heat, and then just the plant just dies, and then the chemicals just go back into the soil. Typically, or at least in the last few years, they've been using this technology just as standalone, just using it like a stick. You just hit the weeds that you want with it. But now they have a partnership with a robotics company, and they're starting to automate these. They're starting to put these on self-driving robots. So same technology, but now they're putting it on robots. Here's another one. This is Carbon Robotics, based out of Seattle. They're using, again, the same AI technology to try to determine crops from weeds, but these guys are using lasers to try to kill them. They're using 150 watt CO2 lasers to actually fry these plants. And there's, you can see from some of the pictures right here, it's pretty striking looking. Here's one where they fried a little weed right next to an onion plant. So you can see the plant that got zapped versus the onion still standing there. It's pretty wild looking. And last one I'll touch on in this category, this is Neo Technologies. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. They're a French company. They just raised $33 million in venture capital funding last month. But they're a few years old. They've been doing this for a while. They have 4 fully autonomous robots that drive around your farms and just do different types of weeding. And of course, since they're a French company, they're geared towards vineyards for the most part. French like their wine. And these things are pretty cool looking. They have this Oreo robot, which is like a really lightweight, fully electric version. Then they have they call them the Ted robot and the Joe robots for vineyards. Getting between all the different vines, all the different grapevines. Then they have this Oz robot, which handles hoeing, weeding, seeding, and makes furrows. Pretty cool looking. Of course, all plants gobble up copious amounts of water. And so another big growing sector here is precision irrigation, it's called, which is basically targeted watering using these hoses with different release valves spaced differently that can meter exact amounts of water where you want it to go and be turned off in areas between your plants where you don't want it to go. Now these can automatically tweak how much water is being metered out based on weather patterns. If you have your whole system synced up with, farm mapping and weather and everything. So this is pretty cool. It can algorithmically dispense fertilizers and pesticides as well. There's a company here called Netafirm, which is it was an Israeli company. It was recently purchased by Orbia, formerly Mexichem, large Mexican ag tech company, and they're heavily invested in California. These things are all over the place in California, and they said that they basically reduce the amount of water that you need for tomatoes, almonds, grapes, and citrus trees by about 50% on average, 60, 70%. And these guys recently partnered with Bayer, the giant chemical company. What they're doing with Bayer is they're actually putting pesticides in the water, and they're metering out pesticides as well as water. And this is killing nematodes, which are like little grubs that live by the roots. Another company here, Rainbird. These guys are also California, and they've been around for a while actually. California, they have to be very careful with their water usage over there. So these guys have been pouring a lot of money into this. They have this S5 precision irrigation system that they've come out with recently. It's got these little check valves along the way, which are supposed to be clog resistant. I guess their marketing material behind this says that's the reason why most of these systems fail, is because they get clogged by dirt and particulates. But this one is supposed to be clog proof. And same thing, these things can shut off in between your different plants and just turn on right where your plants are. So it's a very smart way, very smart and effective way of watering plants when you don't have a lot of water to work with in the first place. Another one I'll mention as a bonus, these guys were a top 10 winner for 2023 AgCon New Inventions. This is the Bee Home by the BeeWise company. They've created a fully autonomous smart beekeeping system, solar powered. It regulates humidity. If there's other insects in there, it supposedly sprays bee-friendly pesticides around. If your bees are about to swarm and go out, it can supposedly detect that and change the conditions to make them stay. I don't know how it does that, but it sounds super cool. And it also automatically harvests the honey. So I think this one is just a really cool one if you've ever had any frustration keeping bees. So that's the state of smart farming in 2023. That's what all the big players are doing right now. There's a lot of cool technology coming out. I'm interested to see how it actually plays out. Something that works on a big flat field out in Kansas might not work on a hilly holler here, in Appalachia. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Some of these solutions are supposedly geared towards that type of environment. I guess my biggest concern on this is that it's very GPS based, and if we have any issues with our GPS system, whether it be solar storms affecting the satellites out in orbit or ionizing the atmosphere, it could really screw these farmers up if they've invested a lot of resources in bringing out all these GPS robots and they don't have their workers anymore. And God forbid if that happened during the harvest, you could lose a whole bunch of crops. It's very time sensitive. You only have a small window to harvest your crops, or else they go bad and you lose your whole harvest for the season, all your work for the year. However this plays out, we want to hope that this empowers the farmers and the farm workers and not just the multinational corporations that are getting more profit off of this robot as a service technology. But we will see. Either way, I hope you guys found this interesting. I sure did researching it, and I will see you next time. So long.